Sairam students, today we will be doing the first lesson from your textbook, that is Beehive, The Fun They Had, written by Isaac Asimov. Before we begin, we'll just see a few things about Isaac Asimov. He was an American writer and also a professor of biochemistry at the Boston University. He was very much well known for his works in science fiction and popular science. Also, he has written more than 500 books related to these subjects. He has also published many science fiction books, and one of the stories in those books is The Fun They Had. Now, you can see a picture in your screen which shows the schools of the future. Now, how a school would be in the future. This particular chapter or story is related to the same, wherein it takes you to the world of the future where computers play a major role. So you just imagine a school without books, without human teachers, and moreover, there would be no emotions that would be expressed. So the situation currently which you are in, that is the lockdown situation, you are unable to attend school in a regular basis. So the situation is like where the learning is happening through virtual classrooms. What are virtual classrooms? They are basically classrooms through which you learn by way of computers or some kind of electronic gadgets like mobiles or your laptops and so on. However, the learning is happening. This is a virtual reality. So without a classroom, it is generally not possible to actually get a personal communication or personal contact with your teachers. However, the author here says that in the future, the entire system of communication with your teachers would be through the electronic or virtual reality only. So the schools of the future are like you learn through computers, you learn through your robotic teachers, or you just have a screen and you sitting and there is learning happening. So basically this story revolves around the future where one has a robotic teacher who trains the students without books, without school, and without a proper classroom. So you can see basically the gist of the story is, it is the world in which the future where computers play a major role. The books and schools are totally non-existent. There are no books, there are no school buildings as such. The concept of virtual classroom and teaching is a major reality out here. But there are certain feelings of the students about the schools that were in the past. So the story goes maybe a century ahead where you would have no schools and no proper classrooms for learning. So let's see basically the main characters who are there in the story. First one is Margie. She is a 11-year-old girl who wish to be a part of the schools of the past. The second person is Tommy. He is a 13-year-old boy who is also Margie's neighbor. Mrs. Jones, who is Margie's mother, who is a very disciplined lady. There is a county inspector. He is a person who basically repairs the mechanical teacher or their robotic teacher. A mechanical teacher is the one who actually comes and trains Tommy and Margie in a virtual classroom. So let us begin with the lesson. Margie even wrote about it that night in her diary. On the page headed 17th May 2157, she wrote, "Today Tommy found a real book. It was a very old book." Margie's grandfather once said that when he was a little boy, his grandfather told him that there was a time when all stories were printed on paper. So what does this suggest? Margie has opened her diary. Diary in the sense now she is not going to write out in any notebook or a book. She is going to type it out on the screen. She wrote 17th May 2157. So you know what the date is, what the future date that she will be writing this. What did she write? That Tommy, that is her friend, had found a real book. What does this real book suggest? It suggests that it was a book which had actual pages and printed material written on it, which was supposed to be Tommy's great-great-grandfather's book, because he was told that all the stories in those days were printed on paper. So basically this was a real book. It fascinated them to see what this kind of a book looked like. They turned the pages, which were yellow and crinkly, and it was awfully funny to read words that stood still instead of moving the way they were supposed to on a screen, you know. And then when they turned back to the page before, it had the same words on it that it had had when they read it the first time. So now you need to know certain words. Crinkly in the sense which had lot of folds and lot of lines. It shows that the book was pretty old. Yellow in the sense when the books get older, the color of those pages seems to fade out. So it turns a little yellowish in color. So the book what they found was yellow and crinkly. Also, it was awfully funny in the sense it looked rather humorous. To see the book, they found it very funny because they saw the words were stationed at a particular place. They were not moving as they were supposed to, because they have always seen the letters, the words moving on a screen one after the others. So they found the book really funny because the alphabets, the words were not moving. And also as they turned the page, they found it was pretty different when they found the same words were repeated, and when they are back, they are reading the same thing again and again. So it was quite funny for them because this kind of books was not available and they had never seen such books earlier in their life. So they were a little inquisitive to know more about this book. Let's move further. "Gee," said Tommy, "what a waste. When you're through with the book, you just throw it away, I guess. Our television screen must have had 1,000,000 books on it, and it's good for plenty more. I wouldn't throw it away." "Same with mine," said Margie. She was 11 and hadn't seen as many telebooks as Tommy had. He was 13. She said, "Where did you find it?" "In my house," he pointed without looking, because he was busy reading, "in the attic." "What's it about? School?" So here, "Gee" is an expression of surprise that Tommy expressed, where he felt that what a waste it is to have printed books with you, because after you finish reading it, like you are through it, means after you have finished reading the book, you just throw it away, probably he felt. But the television screens they used, or the computers they used, stored millions and millions of books which they would never throw it away. So Margie agreed with the same and said that I too wouldn't throw mine. But however, Tommy was much older than Margie, so she felt that he must have witnessed or read many more telebooks than I. Telebooks are e-books or books that are available for you to read on the screen directly. So, in the future days, probably you would have only these kind of books wherein you can keep storing the books and using it as and when needed. So she was inquisitive now to find out where did he get this kind of a book from. He said that he found it on the attic of his house, which was about a school. The book was entirely about a particular school. So both of them were discussing as to what this book would contain, because a school, how can somebody write so much about a school? Because for them, the school was a virtual classroom. Margie was scornful. School? What's that to write about school? I hate school. Margie always hated school, but now she hated it more than ever. The mechanical teacher had been giving her test after test in geography, and she had been doing worse and worse until her mother had shaken her head sorrowfully and sent for the county inspector. Scornful meaning showing that it was not very worthy enough, it was worthless. And sorrowfully meaning with utmost disgust. And sent for meaning called for. So here Margie gave an expression as to what would somebody write about a school, because Margie always hated her school. She wasn't comfortable in her school, as the mechanical teacher or the robotic teacher who trained her used to continuously give her test after test in geography, and she was not performing well at all. She hated school for this reason, because she had to give a lot of tests on a regular basis. However, her mother, that is Mrs. Jones, she was a very disciplined lady. She found that her daughter wasn't doing well, so she sent for the county inspector. She called for the county inspector. The county inspector is a person who actually repairs a mechanical teacher. Now let's see how the county inspector was. He was a round little man with a red face and a whole box of tools with dials and wires. He smiled at Margie and gave her an apple, then took the teacher apart. Margie had hoped he wouldn't know how to put it together again, but he knew how all right. And after an hour or so, there it was again, large and black and ugly, with a big screen on which all the lessons were shown and the questions asked. That wasn't so bad. So here, how does this county inspector look? He was a round little man with a red face who carried a whole box of tools where he had some nuts, some bolts, some dials, wires, so that he could repair the mechanical teacher, that is the computer or maybe the robotic teacher which they used. Also, he gave Margie an apple and patted on her back saying that you are good. But Margie hoped that he wouldn't be able to mend the machine again or put together the mechanical teacher again. Took the teacher apart, meaning he opened the entire tools and he started repairing the mechanical teacher or the robo so that it could be fine again and can be used again. However, Margie always felt that it shouldn't get repaired so that she need not give tests as she hated school. But however, the county inspector managed to assemble everything and make the mechanical teacher right. It was a large black machine or a big screen on which the lessons began again and the questions were asked. So she was a little disappointed because the mechanical teacher had started functioning again. Let's move on. The part Margie hated most was the slot where she had to put homework and test papers. She always had to write them out in a punch code they made her learn when she was 6 years old, and the mechanical teacher calculated the marks in no time. What is a slot? It's a space given wherein you need to punch in your answers. When you have a punch code, that is a method of giving answers by putting the punch or the codes into the slot that is given. So like you have your online exams nowadays wherein you put in your answers and the answers are immediately submitted, and you also are able to get your scores immediately. So something like that. Here Margie hated this where she had to do her homework and her test papers, which was on a regular basis, which she hated a lot. She had to write them out in a punch code, and this coding was taught to them as early as 6. When they were 6 years old, they were taught how to use this kind of a punch code, how you need to put them into the slot. And the mechanical teacher used to immediately calculate and give you your marks. So what happens? You are able to understand your performance immediately. This was the part which Margie used to hate, and she tried to avoid this. However, the county inspector repaired the machine and the machine or the mechanical teacher was functional again. The inspector had smiled after he was finished and patted Margie's head. He said to her mother, "It's not the little girl's fault, Mrs. Jones. I think the geography sector was geared a little too quick. Those things happen sometimes. I have slowed it up to an average 10-year level." Actually, the overall pattern of her progress is quite satisfactory. And he patted Margie's head again. Now here, after he finished his work, the inspector smiled and patted her on her head. He told her mother that it was not her fault that she wasn't able to perform well in the geography sector, because the grade that it was set to was a little higher than her age. So the level was a little higher That is the reason she was not able to function well. So right now he had adjusted the level to a 10-year-old so that she will be able to perform well. And this being a machine, it happens at times that there are certain problems which are created. However, he also said that her overall pattern of progress was satisfactory, that she was doing really well in her academics or in her work. So you need not worry. He consoled Mrs. Jones saying that she was doing a great job. And he patted Margie's head again. So again, in excitement, he patted her head again. Margie was disappointed. She had been hoping they would take the teacher away altogether. They had once taken Tommy's teacher away for nearly a month because the history sector had blanked out completely. So she said to Tommy, "Why would anyone write about school?" So, however, because the mechanical teacher was repaired and even the level was set and adjusted according to her, she was disappointed because she thought that earlier, as Tommy's history sector had crashed or had got erased completely, had got deleted, even hers would be the same. However, her machine was rectified, the problems were sorted out early. Tommy's teacher was taken away for nearly a month because it had blanked out completely. So, for a month, he had nothing to do. He was enjoying. So, she felt that even mine would be the same, and so would I enjoy my life. However, her mechanical teacher was repaired by the county inspector. Now again the same question came to her stating, "Why would anyone write about school?" At the back of her mind she was still having this thought about the book that Tommy had got, that is about the school. How would a school be a topic for a book? So students, we read through a part of the lesson. The second part we would do it in the next class. A quick brush up here. We saw about two children, that is Margie and Tommy. Who were their teachers? A mechanical teacher who used to train them, teach them subjects. However, Margie was doing poorly in the geography sector, but the county inspector rectified this. He adjusted the level to the 10-year-old. Margie was a 10-year-old girl and Tommy was a 13-year-old boy. They had found a book from the attic which was really old, and it was about a particular school, probably schools of the past. So they now are interested in understanding what this kind of a school would be, how this book is related to school, and what is it that is so interesting that Tommy's great grandfather had given it to him. So we will continue in the next class.